There should have been 21 assignments for me to grade, and yet I was looking at 22. It didn't make any sense. I double and triple checked the pile of papers, but there was no mistake. I only had 21 students, and yet there were 22 pages to grade. I was hunched over my desk, going through the pages one by one. I took note of all the names, trying to find the extra assignment. They were all simple essays where they described what they'd done during winter break and what they were most looking forward in the coming year. A simple English assignment. In the middle of the pile, there was one paper that clearly stood out. It was barely legible, and there was no signature. The text was written in squiggly lines with a red pen, pressed so hard into the paper that it had punched several holes.
I'll be free,
The paper said.
I got out, and she has no idea there's two of us now.
The paper was barely legible. Half-finished sentences describing a sudden awakening. Thoughts of breaking things. Describing people as disposable objects. Hearing a voice in the mirror.
My friend gave me a flower, and now I'm here.
There was a scribbled drawing of a blue sunflower in the corner of the paper. It was the strangest thing I'd ever read. Yeah, I'm a teacher. The kids I teach are on the edge of turning into teenagers. It's an awkward age, but it is that space in a young person's life where you can really make an impact. If you can make them feel seen and heard, they might gain a confidence that'll follow them for the rest of their lives. I have 21 students in my class, 8 boys and 13 girls. The day after I graded that paper, I didn't know what to think or say. After I took attendance, it dawned on me. Whoever handed in that paper was in the room right now. It threw me off my tempo. I had them do some individual assignments while I found my bearings. It was the usual ruckus, bickering and joking, awkward teenage flirting, loud discussions about whatever was new online. But something felt different, malevolent. It had to be one of the girls. The paper had hinted at it. But which one? I handed out an extra assignment. Nothing fancy. I just took the crazy paper out of the bunch and distributed the rest randomly to the students. For tomorrow, they were to write a short essay telling me about what they'd read in the other student's essay. Reading comprehension and writing at once? No one would have a problem with that except the students. As I got back home with some takeout sushi, I looked over the strange paper again. There were some smudges going left to right. No matter if you're right-handed or left-handed, that'll happen. But further down, there were more smudges. It looked like the writer had held the pen like a hook, with the pen facing the writer. It indicated a left-handed writer. I double-checked with a few articles online, which said the same thing. But there were no hook-handed writers in my class, I would have noticed. But I was sure there were a few left-handed people. I finished my sushi and went to bed with a chilling feeling that I was missing something obvious. The next day I got the assignments, all 21 of them, no extras. I breathed a sigh of relief, figuring that maybe someone had just played a cruel prank on me. We got through the classes of the day without a hitch. We even managed a fairly successful math quiz. All in all, I wasn't complaining. The extra assignment wasn't that important, but I took them home to grade them anyway. Some had put some effort into their work, and I wanted to reward them. No matter the age, everyone loves Gold Star stickers, and I had plenty on my crafts table. I started going through the papers only to notice something. There were once again 22 of them. At some point during the day, someone had snuck an extra paper in there. Going through the pages, I couldn't help but to feel that bubbling sense of dread. One of these papers was going to be terrifying. It felt like getting slowly pricked by a needle. At first, there's just a pressure, but you know the hurt is coming. It was at the bottom of the pile, red ink, barely legible. Spots from a hook-handed writer.
I know you've caught on,
The paper said.
I want you to know. I want you to chase.
There were little sketches of drops of blood falling into an open mouth. Crude but clear.
Chase me. I chase you.
I didn't sleep well that night. I pulled the curtains. I double-checked all the locks. I pulled the covers up tight, and I left the light on in the hallway. And yet, I still had that awful sinking feeling that I was missing something. Was it Claire? She'd always been a bit of an oddball. Or maybe someone I'd never expect, like Shonda, maybe Petra, Fiona. I had this mental image of someone following me to my car, a young girl hiding in the back seat, a maniacal smile popping up in the rearview mirror, sharp little nails and unblinking eyes diving towards me, cutting my throat open as I'm going 70 meters down the freeway. I didn't sleep well that night. I started imagining shadows passing by in the hall, in the corner of my eye. A few days passed. I started taking notes on the girls in class. I checked what pens they had and which was their main hand. If it was just a matter of someone pranking me, it might be enough just to find a left-handed girl. However, no girl in my class was left-handed, and no one owned a red ink pen. I also had a chat with the school counselor. They couldn't betray patient confidentiality, but they could tell me whether they were aware of any problems that might explain this. They weren't. If anything, they seemed more worried about me. Since this started, I'd seemed a bit on edge. They didn't blame me, but they wanted to make sure I was taking care of myself. I tried several tricks. I tried monitoring the hand-ins. I tried watermarking the papers. I tried all kinds of tricks, but I got nothing. At the end of the day, I kept getting outsmarted. It was as if the paper just appeared out of nowhere, sometime during the day. I couldn't pin it on anyone. I tried to just forget about it, but every time I graded a paper, I feared that another threat would show up. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But the times it did, it just ruined me. That peaceful moment of grading papers and listening to audiobooks had turned into a horrific slideshow.
I'll show you.
One of the notes said.
I'll break a light in your house.
The same day, the kitchen light stopped working. It didn't look broken, but how could I possibly tell? One of those days, as I was chopping leeks in the kitchen, I got this awful sinking feeling in my stomach. Looking out the window, I noticed something. A silhouette. She was short, with long black hair. There was something wrong with the shape of her face. Her skin looked gray. For a moment, we just stared at one another. It took me a few seconds to realize that it wasn't just a face, it was a skull. Still clutching my kitchen knife, I stumbled away from the window. It had to be a mask. That wasn't a real face. It couldn't be. Suddenly the lights broke. All of them. The kitchen, the hallway, the bathroom. Hell, even my desktop lamp at my home office. All of them shattered, spreading searing hot shards across the floor with a violent bang. My ears rang and I dove for cover. It felt like a gunshot. Looking up, there was no one left outside. No mask, no kid, no nothing. I called the police, but there was little they could do. There had been a power surge, that much the electric company could confirm, but there were no witnesses of an intruder. I showed them the notes and filed a threat report. We had a long talk and they tried their best to calm me down. But at the end of the day, I was still alone, and someone was out there. I went through that image in my head 1,000 times. I had several girls in my class, but no one that fit what I'd seen. Her hair was too long. She was too short, too skinny. I couldn't think of anyone that fit that description, but she'd been there, no doubt in my mind. And I had this gnawing feeling that I'd seen her before. Over the next couple of days, I couldn't stop seeing her. She'd be across the road as I went to work in the morning. I'd see her pass by the window in the cafeteria. And one day as I was driving home, I saw her in the rearview mirror of my car, that gray desk head grinning at me. I was getting more notes, not just slipped into the hand-in assignments, but also just scattered around my apartment. At one point I snapped. I just stepped out of the shower. I'd put on a bathrobe and had started to dry my hair when I noticed a message on the bathroom mirror. There, written backwards, it simply said, "Chase me." I screamed as my heart sunk. I broke the bathroom mirror with my hairdryer. "What the fuck do you want from me?" I called out. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I barely noticed the glass shards cutting into my feet as I stormed out. I'd had enough. I had to do something. I couldn't live like this forever. Kid or not, this had to end. "Where are you?" I called out as I passed through my bedroom. "Where the fuck are you?" I glimpsed something outside the window. Of course she was around. Always there, always near. "Come out!" I screamed as I entered the kitchen. "Show yourself!" The moment I stepped into the kitchen, it shook. Every drawer, every door, every appliance, everything flung open as if pulled open by a steady hand. I was so frustrated I could cry. I just wanted it to end, but I was too scared to move. It felt like anything could happen at any moment, like the entire world was listening to me and reacting accordingly. I just stood there trying to remember to breathe. "Please," I whispered, "show yourself. Stop this." And as if to answer my call, she did. The front door creaked. The hinges rusted and fell apart. A gentle breeze was all it took for the door to break. She was so small. There was no doubt in my mind. She wasn't wearing a mask. She was nothing but bone. I backed away like an animal pushed into a corner. I tried to force myself to attack, to do something. But as a response, the kitchen shook again. This time, it was pandemonium. Cutlery crashed onto the floor. Plates rolled out of the dishwasher and broke apart. Glasses shot across the room like bullets. Even the little drawer of miscellanea collapsed in on itself, spreading knickknacks and rubber bands all over the room. "I've chased you," I screamed. "Are we fucking done? Is this it?" She raised a thin gray finger. She pointed at something in the corner. A dry blue sunflower. Something clicked in my head. That sense of missing something. It was still there, but this was the answer. Somehow, this was it. "What do you mean? What? Just talk. Don't just..." There it was at the first note. There'd been a drawing of a blue sunflower, and it said she'd gotten it as a present. This was that flower. I was sure of it.
I got out, and she has no idea there's two of us now.
That's what it had said. That was part of that very first note. She was talking about me. I'd written those notes myself. I'd handed in the assignments. That's how I never noticed it. I looked over at my crafts table. My writing pen was half empty by now. I had red smudges under my left hand. And then there was her. Of course, I'd seen her before, time and time again. I had long black hair as a kid. I'd been skinny and short.
You found me.
Her little voice said.
Funny.
The images came flooding back. A shadow in the bathroom mirror. A simple hello and a flower offered. I remember taking the hand of an impossible being, reaching across a nightmare space to darken my inner child. This awful, malevolent being living at the core of my soul. Something dead and resurrected, trying to make room for madness. But it wasn't just madness, she was real. Doors don't rust by themselves, glasses don't throw themselves, and I can't for the life of my cause an electric surge with my mind. This was a real being, with real power, and she'd settled in the back of my mind, and now I'd chased her. I'd found her.
Do you want me to leave?
She asked.
I can.
I didn't know what to say. Of course I wanted her gone. I wanted it all to be over. But there was this gnawing feeling that there was more to it. She didn't just scare me and torture me for the fun of it.
Tell me to leave.
She insisted.
Set me free.
That was it, wasn't it? She wasn't free. She came from me, and so, maybe she was stuck with me. Maybe she couldn't leave. Maybe she couldn't hurt anyone else. Not as long as I'm around, it had said. I'll be free, in that first note. That meant she wasn't free as of now. To me, it suddenly made sense. Standing there, I just shook my head. You can't leave, can you? I cackled. You're just as stuck with me as I am with you.
I could kill you.
She laughed. No, you can't, can you? If so, why haven't you? There was no response. You need me to cut you loose to get out there, don't you? That I find you and just let go. I took a step forward and saw blood seeping out from the sole of my feet. My hands were rattling like leaves in the wind. I'm not letting go, I screamed. No fucking way.
I'll hurt you.
Do your fucking worst. But there was nothing more. In the blink of an eye, she was gone. But in my mind's eye, I could still see her. Every memory of seeing myself as a kid was tainted. I had memories of seeing myself in the mirror with a skeleton-faced grin. I remember seeing my reflection in water puddles. I knew that wasn't what I looked like, but in my head, that was me. We were interchangeable. She was me, and I was her. Two beings, and I was gonna keep her here. I'll be a walking fucking jail. I know it sounds absurd, but she is real, and nothing I can do changes that. I couldn't live with that thing coming out, reaching other people, spreading. I can't work at the school anymore. She scares the children. I'm afraid of seeing other people. She hurts them whenever she gets the chance. I've seen birds fall out of the sky, a family of moles lying dead at my doorstep, circles of roadkill lined up around my car. I've been thrown, cut, burned, and beaten, but I haven't succumbed. She is just as scared of me as I am of her. I had to write this down. If you're reading this, something has happened. Maybe an accident, maybe I've grown sick. I've set up for this to be posted as my post-mortem, as an explanation for my eccentric behavior. It's on a 7-day timer, so if I haven't confirmed my status by that time, it is safe to say I'm not around anymore. And if I died, I pray to God I took her with me. I don't want to think about what that thing could do if set free. Not too long ago, I saw a viral video compilation of thieves in low-income areas. People filling up baskets with items and walking out the door, breaking windows, threatening cashiers, that kind of stuff. But one of the 3-second clips in the compilation was something different. In the clip, we can see a group of people walking over a broken glass door, slowly marching. It looks like a riot, but there's more to it. I was there, and I want to tell the whole story. This happened a few years ago. Before heading off to college, I wanted to save up some extra money. I used to live in a pretty shitty neighborhood, and there were only 2 options for a side gig. One was at the local bar, and the other was at a convenience store. I applied at the convenience store, had a quick interview with the manager, and started the following Monday. Now I gotta stress just how run down this place was. This was the kind of place where the same homeless man sits outside every day, all day, where there were no baskets to carry stuff in. They'd been stolen too many times. There were a dozen signs taped to the door with a dozen little rules, all to prevent the various grifts and thefts that had been attempted over the years. No bags, no backpacks, no plastic bags, no canvas bags, no carts, and of course no weapons. Still, despite its faults, it was the only place local folks could afford to shop at, and while there were some people who took advantage of it, a vast majority loved the place. Right down to the homeless guy chilling by the door. I was planning to be there for the summer. We had a morning and evening shift, and we changed who did what every 2 weeks. The video clip in question took place during my 4th week, my 2nd week at the evening shift. It was a Saturday evening. Benny, the homeless guy, was off to recycle some cans. The AC was acting up, leaving a thin layer of humidity on everything in the store, including me. I was working the counter. It was almost closing time, but I waited for Benny to get back before closing. The guy was harmless and survived on little to nothing. He usually spent what he'd earned during the day before closing time. I wasn't working alone. There was also Lonnie, a mother of 3 who wanted to get some extra money on the side while her husband was posted overseas. A woman in her mid-40s with this long black hair that could almost reach her knees. Every time I think of her, I'm reminded of oatmeal cookies. We were ready to close when a customer walked in. I was expecting Benny, so when I turned to see a complete stranger, I was a bit surprised. Now, we get new people all the time, but this one was unusual for a number of reasons. 1, he was clearly not a local. The guy was wearing a brand-name blazer and custom-tailored pants. 2, he was in a hurry. He was clutching this brown canvas bag, panting like a tired dog. I didn't get the time to ask him to hand it over, as per the sign.
You got salt?
He asked what...
Mineral salt.
Yeah, go check. He was sprinting down the aisle before I had a chance to finish my sentence. Lonnie peeked out from the dairy aisle with a raised eyebrow. I shrugged. Moments later, there was some commotion. I went to check on the guy and saw that he'd pulled down 6 cans of salt on the floor, opened them, and drowned his bag in it. He was whining and pleading, repeating, "Come on, come on, come on," over and over. He was in distress, like his life depended on this. I didn't know what to do. I was going to call the police, but I wanted to de-escalate first. Still, I didn't want to talk to him. There was no telling what a guy in his state of mind might do. Instead, I stepped back, got my phone out, and talked to him as calmly as possible. "Sir, you can't do that in here," I said. "You need to pay and take this outside."
There's no time.
He said.
I can't. I'm sorry.
'Cause I can't. 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 'Cause What happened next came out of nowhere. One moment, I was looking at this crazy guy covering the ground in salt. Next moment, pandemonium. Lanny screamed at me from the front counter. The lights began to flicker, then die, leaving the store in sudden darkness. Running up to the front counter, my jaw dropped. Lonnie had barely managed to close and lock the front door. There were at least 24 people outside, none of whom I recognized. These people were something else entirely. At first glance, there was nothing strange about them, but looking a little closer, you could see a few things were off. For example, there was a woman in a nightgown. She didn't even have shoes on. A little further back, there was a guy who looked like a political campaigner for a candidate I'd never heard of. And to the side was this really tall man who looked like a fancy sommelier, except the front of his shirt had been cut to shreds, like he'd been run over by a lawnmower. These people were gathering around the storefront, poking and prodding for a way in. One of them smacked their hand flat on the glass. Lonnie was already calling the police. The store had security cameras once, but they had long since been wrecked. We just had these camera-looking things that were basically just a red light. It was mostly a deterrent rather than something functional, so there was no way for me to check how many people were really out there. Still, there were more than a few. I didn't even know that one of the front cameras actually worked, providing the clip in question later on. The strange man with the canvas bag was on his knees crying, like full-on wailing like a scared kid. It was eerie to see someone just break down like that. It's at that point you start to realize how serious something really is. We had managed to lock ourselves in. Lonnie was on the phone, trying to get the police to hurry. It wasn't easy to get them to come by this neighborhood. Apparently, it was viewed as a bit of a lost cause. They advised her to get out of there and let our insurance company deal with it. The fact that these people showed up out of nowhere didn't seem to bother them. And the fact that our lives were in danger was described as exaggerating. I have this one vivid memory of the beginning of that night. There was this neon sign for a bar across the road, and that was the only light that came through. All these strange people, backlit by this eerie red and blue. It was eerie. There was no way to tell what was going to happen next. Were they there for us? For the store? For the strange man? While Lonnie kept calling for help, I turned my attention to the stranger. He'd slumped down against one of the shelves and gone catatonic. He just sat there, staring at the bag. I pushed against his shoulder a bit, and he didn't seem to notice. I decided to check the bag. This too garnered no response. The bag contained a sort of metal thermos, a silvery gray container that had burst open. There was a navy blue liquid covering the inside of the bag, now drenched in salt. It had this faint smell of ammonia and had begun to harden into a gel. I did my best not to touch it.
It's too late.
The man whispered.
It's too late. It doesn't matter anymore.
What? I yelled. What doesn't matter? Who are you? He waved his head back and forth as if bobbing for an answer, but no words came to mind. He shook his head and sunk his face back into his hands. I tried to push him to answer, but he was just broken. There was no point in talking to him, and judging by the sounds coming from our storage, I didn't have time to stand around. I could hear Lonnie yelling at an emergency responder. I could hear a repeated metal clanking out back, like someone was beating the back door with a steel pipe. Then a grinding metal noise. It took me a moment to realize that they were moving the trash container out back, probably to get up on the roof. I rushed back to Lanny, who was hanging up the phone and trying again, desperate to get someone on the line who was ready to actually listen. I think they're on the roof, I stuttered. I think they're climbing.
Shit.
She sniffled.
Shit.
She took me by the arm and led me to the back storage. There, she pointed to a frail metal ladder leading to a yellow hatch in the ceiling, about 12 feet up.
Make sure it's locked. Block it with something.
With what?
I don't know.
She stormed back out a second later. I grabbed a metal pipe from a vacuum cleaner and painstakingly made my way up the ladder. I managed to lock the hatch and jam the pipe between two handles. It wasn't very stable, but it would hold for a bit. It was probably some kind of rooftop maintenance hatch, most likely for ventilation purposes. The thing hadn't been opened in years. The rust on the metal rungs testified to that. As I was about to climb back down, I stopped. I looked back up. While the hatch was shut, I could tell there was something up there. There was this low huffing noise coming from it. Someone was pressing their face against the other side of the hatch, breathing against it. Out of some morbid curiosity, I crept a little closer. "What do you want?" I spat. "What the hell do you want?"
Home.
Something mumbled.
Go home.
It was such an eerie noise, like someone belching the words rather than speaking them. Like an involuntary, painful reaction. More seizure than speech. Home. Go home. Then a crash. I hurried down the ladder, rushing towards the front door. This was the scene shown in the clip. A few seconds that we got from the only security camera that intermittently worked. They had broken through the door and were slowly stepping inside. They didn't seem to be in a hurry. If anything, they seemed exhausted. For a second, Lanny and I just held our breaths. There was no way to tell what was going to happen. Finally, a man with a crowbar stepped forward. He looked at us and belched up something dark that covered his chest. Then, as if nothing happened, he walked right past us. The others followed. They were heading for the aisle with the strange man and the canvas bag. Lonnie had given up on calling for help and had resorted to filming instead. It was helpless, but the only thing we could do. We couldn't fight these people. We were outnumbered 10 to 1. I considered pushing past them and just running into the night, but I didn't want to go near them. There was no telling what would happen if you provoked them. These weren't ordinary people. I can't tell you what was wrong, but I can tell you something was. What happened next, you can't see in the clip. 24 people descended on that aisle, picking up that canvas bag and tearing it apart. They were rubbing the contents of the broken thermos thing over themselves, climbing over one another to get every little drop of it. It looked like a goddamn snake pit of arms, heads and legs. People just devolving into careless meat, completely devoid of conscious thought. Animals. Meanwhile, the strange man was just sitting there, catatonic. As the bag was torn to pieces, a handful of the intruders sort of flopped over. They lay flat on their back, letting their legs and feet curl into something resembling dead branches. Others were making these excruciating, hungry, whining noises, desperately weeping at the empty bag. Then they turned their attention to the stranger. One of them clawed at his leg. He shook them off. Then another did the same.
No.
He said.
No, no.
It was this weak little grunt, like the man was fighting himself to realize what was about to happen. Lonnie and I shared a terrified look.
The fire extinguisher.
Lonnie whispered.
Get the fire extinguisher.
It was across the store. As soon as I turned my back on them, I heard the strange man's groaning no grow more desperate. It went from a mumble to an angry yell to a desperate plea. Then it was just screaming, blood-curdling screaming, gaining and losing in strength. I got the fire extinguisher and ran back towards the aisle, meeting Lanny halfway. She had this haunted look on her face and shook her head. She couldn't close her mouth, like her face was stuck in a panicked, silent scream. She covered her mouth with her hands, shaking like dry leaves.
Oh my god.
She huffed.
Oh my fucking god.
I didn't see much. There was blood, but like thick blood. Chunks of it. Tufts of hair, pieces of a torn shirt, bone. A couple intruders were rolling around the bloodied floor like it was catnip. Others were slowly getting up, disillusioned and desperate. One older man, covered mouth to toe in dripping blood, pointed a shaking finger at me and Laney.
Them?
He coughed.
Maybe them?
Then they came for us. I didn't realize what was about to happen until they smiled. They clung to this primal hope that we, somehow, had something they needed. Lonnie snapped me out of it, dragging me into the back storage. She fumbled the keys and locked the double doors while I used a broom handle to bar them. There were still banging metal noises coming from both the ceiling hatch and the back door. Then a voice, one.
Them!
It wheezed.
Them!
And from the back door, another voice parroted it. Like a rising storm, the word swept over the invaders until we heard it everywhere. Them. We made our way to the lunchroom before I heard the broom handle crack. They were through the storage doors. Lanny was desperately dialing her phone, while I locked us in the lunchroom, a tiny room with a shared bathroom, a window, and a couple of lockers. I could hear wet skin slap against the window, but I couldn't see what it was. The curtains were drawn.
Fucking yes.
Lonnie cried into her phone.
Yes. Yes, it's me again. They're getting in. They're...
The window broke. Before I even saw someone, I pulled the safety pin from the extinguisher and blasted it. Lainey fled into the bathroom, locking it behind her. The next few seconds felt like an eternity. Someone was crawling through the broken glass of the window. I could see the rough stains of blood against the powdered white. The lunchroom door buckled. I could hear flesh hit concrete as the hatch in the storage broke outside. Someone fell through. It sounded like a hard boot coming down on a wet cabbage. They were breaking through, slowly but surely, all to the sound of a rhythmic them, them, them. I swung a locker open, but realized there was no way I could hide in there. I couldn't go for the window. I couldn't push past the doors. This was it. It was it. To this day, I lay awake thinking about what I felt in that moment. That ice-cold primal panic, forgetting to breathe, feeling your tongue drying up as your airways open up, preparing for a death scream. Then Lonnie pulled me into the bathroom. It was tiny. It was meant for, at best, one average-sized person. I fell backwards, landing with my back against the toilet. Lonnie climbed over me to lock the door just as someone reached the handle. The door opened inwards, so I put up my legs and locked my knees. Lonnie fumbled around in the sink where she'd put her phone. Someone was still on the line, but I suspect all they could hear was our desperate screams and that ever-present mantra of them, them, them. The hinges were shaking. The metal handle rattled. I could count every nail on the door and see the minuscule movements as they slowly rolled out. In that moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat and how it slowly synced up to the monotonous chant of them, them, them. Looking back at it, my mind is just black. There's nothing there. It's like trying to remember a vague nightmare, something that happened to an unreal version of yourself. And in those moments when you realize that you were there, the real you, then it spirals. And for a couple of skipped heartbeats, I'm back there, fighting for my life. I'm back with that chant, that banging on the door. At one point, the door buckled. Fingers poked through the gap, grabbing Lonnie's long black hair. They tore out a handful of it, like a full fist. Even in all that panic, I saw her scalp turning red. But we pushed back, and the door stayed shut just a little longer. It was still dark, but with every push against the door, and with every inch the door gave, little glimpses of moonlight came through like a sickening strobe light. But a little longer was all we needed. The final thing I heard them say was, no, home, please, home. Then this combination of home, them, please, and no. The banging slowly stopped. My hearing went from that awful mantra to my own heartbeat, and then nothing. A light breeze perhaps, a careful knock. Lainey and I held our breaths.
Excuse me. Y'all doing all right in there?
Benny, the homeless guy. The coast was clear. Stepping out, there was no one but Benny left. The ground was covered in this black ash, stinking of ammonia and sulfur, but the attackers were gone. The place was a complete mess. Every window and door broken. You could see traces in the ash where people had dragged their feet before they seemingly disappeared. Going back out into the store, there was no sign of the strange man. There was still blood spatter covering the side of the aisle, but now the ground was covered in that awful black ash. I stepped over the broken front door, past the trampled flowers and broken glass. I have this vivid memory of blue petals from a sunflower getting stuck to the side of my black work shoes as I went out into the night. Minutes later, the police showed up, and the rest is history. The whole event was categorized as a sort of riot. No suspect was arrested, and the strange man was never identified. From what I've heard, they never investigated anything as a murder or assault. For all intents and purposes, that night was just a strange break-in. So yeah, somehow that clip made its way into a random compilation online. I'm not sure how. Lonnie sent me the link. It's been a few years, but we still keep in touch. Not a lot, though. Seeing one another kind of reminds us about that night, and I think both of us just wants to forget. I guess what I want to say is that some things are different from what they seem. So think twice before you share something. Take a step back. Think.